We bring in our legal panel, former prosecutors Katie Fang and Paul Henderson. Katie, let me start with you because you just heard the lawyer say there will probably be a lawsuit. Is there any doubt in your mind that, first of all, there will be and that this will never go to trial?
There may not be a lawsuit, and that's because you won't have to bring a lawsuit to be able to get a payout of millions of dollars. We've heard today about the Moab dropped in Afghanistan. Well, this might be the mother of all lawsuits against United to this point. I'm thinking we're looking at $10 million plus, possibly. The damages we heard, the physical, emotional trauma sustained by Dr. Dow, significant, egregious, and likely will result in United making an offer to settle before this case even hits the courthouse steps.
Paul, can you imagine any argument that a defense lawyer could make to United to say you ought to fight this?
Well, certainly they can argue legally. Unfortunately, those legal arguments aren't going to play out in the court of public opinion. And so, as you know, there's a contract of carriage that all passengers sign off on every time they take a flight. And that's about 50 pages of documents that allow the airline to do practically anything in terms of denying passengers access to a flight or removing them from a flight, where they weigh and evaluate who's in first class, who paid more for a ticket.
Yeah, but does it say in there somewhere we can beat you and drag you off the plane?
It absolutely doesn't. And just having that discussion, you've already lost in that court of public opinion. So you may have a defensible legal argument, but it's never going to play, and it's a PR nightmare for them. And that's exactly why I agree we are never going to see this case go to trial. Every time the plaintiffs file a motion, every time they file or have a hearing, it's a reminder to everyone against United about how poor the public service has been and how they've treated this passenger in particular. So it's never going to happen.
You really see a story that goes viral where there's such unanimity of opinion. I haven't seen much of people saying he's the bad guy here. And in the meantime, Dr. Dow's attorney also talked about something that I actually hadn't heard before. He sort of indicated responsibility by the pilot. Take a listen.
Somebody has to have control, and it's got to be the pilot. And the flight crew have to follow the captain's orders. We're going to learn, I'm sure, the captain at some point called on the aviation department police force.
Katie, do you see a case here against the pilot?
Well, listen, clear aviation rules say that the PIC, the pilot in command, is in charge of what's going on in that plane, but we have learned that a gate agent for United called airport security. That is when those three aviation, we'll call them cops, but they're not cops, security personnel showed up. They were wearing jackets emblazoned with the word police. They were not supposed to be wearing jackets. As we heard today in Chicago, they were not supposed to be wearing jackets that look like that. They have their own independent liability, Chris and Paul, I think, for the actions that they took, whether it was at the behest of United or because they were being overzealous. Ultimately, this guy got messed up at the hands of those airport security, and it was because United said, get that man off our plane, and that's why they're going to be liable.
It just reminded me again as I'm seeing the horror, and we've all seen and heard that video so many times, but I wonder if there's anything that could be done by the passengers on this flight, Paul. I mean, severe emotional distress or something. I mean, we saw people so upset. We saw, for example, one teacher who took all of his students off because he thought it was so distressing for them to witness what was going on. Is this the only lawsuit we might see?
I think it is generally. You may see some class actions. You still have to prove both direct and proximate cause for other agents that may have been on the flight. So in terms
what does
of the
that
other
mean,
passenger,
direct and proximate cause? Tell me that in non-legal terms.
Sure. So what that means is I may be able to sue if I have a close and personal relationship with someone, but if I'm just an innocent bystander or someone in an audience seeing something horrific happen, the standard of care is higher in order for me to pursue a legal suit. Now, that doesn't mean that we speak to the larger issue in this case, which is how passengers are treated generally in terms of who is taken on or off a plane and how they're taken on or off a plane. And that's the real issue in this case. What was the scope and the excessive force that may have been used in terms of how the airline exercised its authority over all of those passengers? That's the real issue, and that's the real concern, and that's why the United Airlines is going to do everything possible to try and keep this out of the media and to try and get rid of this case as quickly as possible.
Is that what we were seeing today, do you think, Katie? Because they said, I guess it was actually yesterday, that they were going to compensate all the people on that plane. They can have their money back.
Yeah, listen, that was a great PR optic for United, but frankly, Chris, you need to muzzle Munoz. This guy keeps on admitting liability on the part of United. Somebody needs to make him stop speaking, because every time he says something, he either makes it worse for himself and United or better for Dr. Dow. It depends on how you look at it. But listen, you know, the people keep on forgetting, too, Dr. Dow's wife was on that plane. She saw this happen to her husband in front of her. Talk about somebody also saying, hey, look at me and the claims that I might be able to bring. She has a cause of action against United.
Yes.
Katie, Paul, great conversation. Thank you both so much. And thank all of you for watching.
Sure.
I'm Chris Jansen.